He thought it was just another snowy morning, a snowplow worker, alone, forgotten, barely scraping by, clearing the roadside like he did every day. But then he saw them. 8 golden retriever puppies, scattered like trash in the snow, fur frozen, tiny bodies shaking, one already gone, and still no one stopped. No one until Noah did. He didn't have money, he didn't have space, but he had something this world had almost taken from him: heart. What came next? It changed everything, and it might just change you too. Before we begin, tell me, what city do you think is the best place in the world for a dog to grow up happy and safe? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you believe even the smallest life matters, hit that subscribe button, because this story will stay with you long after the last paw print fades. The snow had not stopped for nearly 2 days. It wasn't a gentle snowfall, the kind that blankets the world in soft white silence, but a relentless barrage of icy wind and needle-fine flurries that scraped across skin like sandpaper. The streets of Boise, Idaho were near deserted, and the sky hung low with a dull gray weight that refused to lift. Trees stood like skeletons. Sidewalks were buried in uneven layers of crusted snow. Only the scraping sound of a city snowplow marked any sign of human movement. And that was Noah Granger, inching his old machine down a back road few would bother to travel. Noah was 48, though the lines on his face made him appear older. His skin was tanned and windburned, his nose a little crooked from a bar fight long ago, and his beard, a patchy salt and pepper thing, always looked like he'd forgotten to shave for just one more day. His eyes, deep set and a dull green, gave the impression of someone who'd seen too much and said too little. Years of night shifts, cheap motel coffee, and a back injury from a fall off a loading dock had ended his long-haul trucking days. Now he worked city snow routes in winter, and in warmer months, odd jobs scraping weeds and cleaning gutters. He lived alone in an aging RV, a rust-rimmed Winnebago tucked behind a closed gas station lot on the edge of town. That morning he was working the outskirts, pushing slush away from a stretch of cracked road behind a shuttered warehouse. His gloves were frayed, and the heater in the plow only wheezed lukewarm air, but Noah didn't complain. He never did. The only sound he made was a long exhale as he spotted something in the snowbank to his right, something not quite right in shape or color. He slowed the plow and narrowed his eyes. At first, it looked like trash, maybe an old sack or a pile of discarded clothes. But then one of the lumps moved. Noah slammed the brakes, yanked on the handbrake, and jumped out. The cold hit his face like a slap as he trudged through the knee-high drift. His boots sank, crackling through the crust of ice. The closer he got, the clearer the horror became. Small bodies, limp and shaking. Puppies. Golden retriever puppies. 8 of them, no more than 4 or 5 weeks old, scattered like someone had hurled them from a moving vehicle. Their fur was matted with snow and grime, one pup half buried, its tiny ribcage still. Another whimpered faintly, trying to lift its head. A few feet away, half covered in snow, was a cracked and broken plastic storage bin, turned on its side, lid snapped in half, as if whoever left them had intended to hide them for a while, but changed their mind, or simply didn't care. Noah knelt beside them without hesitation. "God Almighty," he muttered, pulling off his gloves. He touched each small form, counting. 1, 2, 5, 8. One was clearly gone. The others were cold, too cold. "Hang in there, babies," he whispered, voice cracking as he slipped his coat off and wrapped the smallest 3 together inside it. He scooped up the rest, barely cradling them all with his arms, and turned back toward the plow. Minutes later, he was in the back of his RV, heater cranked to max, kettles on the stove whistling steam. He laid the puppies gently onto an old sleeping bag near the heater vent. The RV was cluttered with tools, duct tape, broken parts of a toaster he'd meant to fix, and a pile of clean but worn towels. He used everything he had, warmed rags, steam, body heat, to bring them back. He rubbed their limbs gently, whispering nonsense. He boiled water in jars and tucked them into the folds of blankets to mimic warmth. One of the pups, a round-bellied male who sneezed constantly but kept inching toward the food dish, made Noah chuckle through the panic. "All right, Muffin, you get to live first," he murmured. Another pup refused to eat, but kept trying to crawl toward the door, even as her legs failed. "Scout," Noah said. "That's what you are, always looking out." A reddish-eared pup batted another in the face, then fell backward with a surprised yelp. "Rusty, you little punk!" The names came quickly, almost instinctively, as he observed them. Bean, the quiet one curled in the back. Clover, the shy but curious girl. Willow, who clung to others, burying her nose into their fur. Peanut, the smallest, trembling constantly, barely able to stand. And finally, Lucky, the one who had been closest to death, but now blinked slowly up at him, eyes half open, breath shallow but steady. Noah sat beside them for hours, pressing his back to the wall, rubbing each one down again and again. When his stomach growled, he ignored it. When his old back ached, he stayed hunched. He didn't even notice his eyes were wet. He hadn't meant to care this much. Not this fast, not again. But something had cracked inside him the moment he'd seen those tiny bodies in the snow. Something old and rusted. Maybe grief. Maybe guilt. Maybe just the simple human need to hold on to life when he could. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have money for vet visits or food bags. But what he did have, he gave. Warmth, attention, effort. And that first night, in the quiet hum of the RV, surrounded by the soft whimpers and shallow breathing of 8 tiny lives, Noah Granger did something he hadn't done in years. He whispered, "You're safe now," and meant it. The next morning, the storm had softened, leaving behind a ghostly calm over Boise. The thick snowfall had paused, but the sky remained the color of wet ash, and the temperature lingered far below freezing. Noah didn't sleep. He had dozed in the corner of the RV, half sitting, with Scout curled against his leg, and Lucky, frail and shivering, tucked into a flannel-lined crate near the heater. When he opened his eyes to the gray morning light, his breath still formed clouds in the air, but all 8 pups were alive, barely. Lucky, the weakest of the bunch, was burning up. Noah placed a calloused hand gently on the pup's belly and felt the heat. Too much heat. He rummaged through a dusty plastic tub marked First Aid and found an old thermometer, carefully trying to get a reading, but it was cracked. He sighed and rubbed his temples. He'd been hoping he wouldn't need outside help this soon, but the rise and fall of Lucky's chest was too fast, too shallow. Noah grabbed his coat, carefully placed Lucky in a box lined with towels, and then set the box next to the stove. "You hang on, kid," he murmured, then stepped outside into the brittle morning air. It was time to go back to where he'd found them. Something about that spot kept clawing at his thoughts. There was more to see. He drove the snowplow back to the same remote stretch of road. The snow wasn't as thick now, and the layer covering the scene had thinned enough to reveal what had been missed before. Noah stepped out of the vehicle and squinted into the half-melted snowbank. There, faint but unmistakable, was a smear of dried blood, trailing from the edge of the road toward the tree line. Just beside it were deep indentations of large tires, possibly from a heavy SUV or a transport van. And next to those, boot prints. Not fresh anymore, but preserved enough in the crusted snow to see the tread pattern. He followed them slowly, careful not to step directly over the trail until the trees swallowed the tracks completely. He took a few photos with his flip phone, blurry and low quality, but better than nothing, then headed toward the small local police substation. The officer at the desk was a stocky woman in her late 30s named Officer Mendez. She had short black hair slicked back, and a voice that suggested she'd smoked too many cigarettes in too many long shifts. Her uniform was clean but wrinkled, and she kept glancing at the clock like she was hoping for lunch. Noah explained what he'd found, the puppies, the scene, the blood trail, and showed her the photos. Mendez glanced at the phone, eyebrows raised. "Look, Mr. Granger, I hear you. That's a sad thing you found, no doubt," she said, placing the phone down gently. "But unless you saw someone actually doing the dumping, we don't have much to go on. Blood in the snow could be from a deer, tire marks are everywhere, and, let's be honest, people abandon animals all the time." Noah's jaw clenched. There was a plastic bin, shattered, like they were stuffed inside, and one of them died. She sighed, then scribbled a note. "I'll file it, all right? And I'll pass it up to our animal cruelty liaison. That's all I can promise." She offered him a tight smile and returned to her paperwork. Noah walked out, bitter air cutting through his coat. As he turned back toward his truck, he heard a voice behind him. "Wait, are you the guy who found the puppies?" The voice came from a woman standing beside a silver compact car. She was in her mid-20s, tall and lean, with long auburn hair tied into a loose braid that spilled over her right shoulder. Her face was dotted with freckles, and though her eyes were hazel and tired, there was a sharp intelligence behind them. She wore a thick tan coat with a university patch sewn on the arm, and held a reusable coffee mug in both hands, like it was the last source of warmth on Earth. "I'm Ivy Malone," she said. "I'm a veterinary student doing my internship at the West Boise Animal Care Center. Officer Mendez told me about the pups. Are they okay?" Noah paused. "One's real sick. The rest, hanging on. You know dogs?" She smiled, stepping closer. "Golden retriever pups? I'd give a kidney to save one. Show me?" 15 minutes later, Ivy sat cross-legged on the floor of Noah's RV. The smell of old vinyl, damp blankets, and boiled water hung in the air. She moved gently from one puppy to another, checking gums, ears, hydration. Lucky, in her lap, whimpered weakly. "This little guy's fading fast. He's got a fever, probably from exposure, and maybe a respiratory infection. He needs fluids and antibiotics, ASAP." Noah rubbed the back of his neck. "I ain't got money for a vet, barely got enough propane." Ivy's look softened. "Then it's a good thing I'm not billing you. I can call the clinic, get him admitted under emergency intake. They have a fund for rescue cases." Noah hesitated, then nodded once. "You'd do that?" "Of course." She gently stroked Lucky's head. "I'd do worse for less." They wrapped Lucky in a blanket and transferred him into a portable carrier Ivy had in her trunk. As she closed the door to her car, she looked back at Noah. "You did a good thing. Most people wouldn't have even stopped." Noah didn't respond, just nodded and looked back toward the 7 remaining pups now nestled in their little makeshift beds. As Ivy drove off, snow started to fall again. Slow, soft flakes this time, drifting down like ash from a fire long dead. Noah sat on the floor of his RV that evening, one leg tucked under him, a steaming mug of instant coffee cooling at his side. The snow had started again, not as vicious as before, but persistent. It dusted the windows in fine crystals and made the light from the hanging bulb seem even more yellow. 7 tiny bodies stirred softly beneath layers of mismatched towels and flannel. Each of the surviving puppies had found their preferred sleeping pattern. Rusty sprawled on his back with one ear flopped comically over his eye. Scout pressed close to the wall, ever observant, while Muffin snored with wet little huffs, belly twitching with puppy dreams. Noah hadn't heard from Ivy since she left with Lucky earlier that morning. The silence made him uneasy. He'd checked his ancient flip phone 4 times, even though it hadn't rung in months, except for robocalls and weather alerts. He rubbed his palms together and reached for the old flashlight to inspect the pups one more time. That's when he noticed it. As he shifted Clover, quiet and gentle, always hiding behind the others, something on her neck snagged slightly against the towel. Curious, Noah gently peeled back the edge of her faded cloth collar. Stitched along the inside, with thick, coarse thread, were the letters, a 4. He frowned. That was no pet tag. It wasn't even machine-sewn. It looked handmade, deliberate. He checked Muffin next, rolling the chubby pup onto his back and inspecting his collar. A 2, Willow. A 5, Scout. A 1. Every one of them had a code, a letter, and a number. All the same cloth, same thread, same placement. Noah wasn't a man prone to speculation, but his stomach dropped. He grabbed his coffee and sat back against the wall, brain turning slowly. This wasn't random. This wasn't some backyard breeder discarding an unwanted litter. This was something else, something organized. When his phone buzzed on the counter, he jumped. It was Ivy. "I'm at the clinic," she said breathlessly, voice slightly tinny over the weak reception. "Lucky's stable. They've got him on fluids and warming pads. But Noah, I need to come back. There's something off about these collars." She arrived 20 minutes later, bundled in a darker parka this time, snow speckling her long braid. Her cheeks were red from the wind, and she looked like she hadn't eaten all day. In one hand she carried a notebook, in the other, a sealed envelope. She dropped her bag by the door and knelt beside the pups without hesitation. "I was thinking about the name stitching. I've seen it once before," she said, "during an internship in Spokane. a case involving a failed kennel that was breeding designer litters using unethical genetic pairing. They didn't use names, just number tags for tracking. Noah gestured toward Scout. These tags match? Exactly. A-series usually means first litter of a breeding pair. They weren't raised as pets, just inventory. Noah let out a low whistle. Damn. While Ivy inspected the collars one by one, Noah moved to the kitchenette and opened a rusted tin of chili. He only had one working burner, but he lit it and began warming the food while watching Ivy. She had a natural gentleness, efficient and focused, yet soft around the animals. She reminded him faintly of his late wife, though younger, more fire in her speech. "You ever deal with this kind of stuff before?" he asked. Ivy hesitated. "Not directly, but I volunteered with rescue cases, and I interned under a vet who used to help expose illegal breeders. She taught me how to spot the signs, the way they wean them too early, the respiratory issues, the uniform collars, and the silence." She looked up. "Have you noticed? They barely bark." Noah blinked. It was true. Aside from the occasional squeak or soft cry, the puppies were eerily quiet for their age. Ivy continued. They probably weren't socialized properly. That, or punished when they made noise, could explain the submissive behaviors. Muffin chose that moment to choke slightly while guzzling water from a dish. Noah dropped his spoon and rushed over, gently lifting the pup's chin, patting his back with surprising grace for such rough hands. "Easy, boy. Don't try to inhale the whole bowl." Muffin coughed, then let out a tiny burp and rolled onto his side, looking proud of himself. Ivy grinned, the moment of tension breaking. "You're really good with them," she said genuinely. "You ever work with animals?" Noah shook his head. "Nah, drove trucks. Then I broke my back slipping off a frozen dock in Billings. Haven't hauled since. I clean snow, clean gutters, patch fences. That's my life now." Ivy watched him carefully. "You said yesterday you lost someone?" He stared at the chili can on the burner. The silence stretched. Finally, he nodded. "My son, Caleb, congenital heart defect, lived 6 years. I was always on the road, didn't get to be there much. He loved dogs, though, said he'd have 100 someday." He chuckled bitterly. "Didn't expect I'd be the one with 8. Ivy said nothing, but her expression softened as she reached out and stroked Willow's head. As the evening deepened, the snow thickened again. Ivy stayed to help clean the pups, changed out their bedding with some clean towels she had in her trunk, and finally made a small note in her journal before packing up. "I'll run those collar photos by my supervisor," she said as she slipped on her gloves. "He might know if there's a case file already open on a breeder with this signature." Noah nodded. "And Lucky? He's not out of the woods yet, but he's fighting, just like the rest of them." As Ivy stepped out into the night, Noah whispered after her, "Thanks for giving a damn." She turned, smiled faintly, and disappeared into the falling snow. The snow had stopped falling, but the streets remained glazed in white, with ice hanging along rooftops like brittle lace. A weak morning sun tried to pierce through the haze, but failed to warm anything below. Noah had taken to walking the puppies up and down the RV aisle in small groups, letting them stretch their tiny legs while he kept the space heated with the RV's aging propane system. The scent of wet fur and boiled oats hung in the air like a blanket, somehow comforting, even if stale. Around mid-morning there was a knock on the side of the RV. Noah opened the door cautiously to find a thin boy of around 12 standing on the icy lot. He wore an oversized beanie and an orange reflective jacket, the sleeves too long and the zipper stuck halfway up. His fingers poked out of fraying gloves as he held up a plastic bag of rolled newspapers. "You Mr. Granger?" the boy asked, peering into the RV. Noah narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, you lost or something?" The boy sniffled. "Nah, I'm Toby. I do the paper run around here. My mom works the diner on Lincoln. She said you're the guy with the puppies." "That's right," Noah replied, still cautious. "Why?" Toby stepped forward. "The night before that storm hit, I saw a car parked near the warehouse, a silver SUV. Woman was driving. I remember because I almost hit her with my bike when she pulled out without her headlights on." Noah's eyebrows lifted. "You sure?" Toby nodded. "She had real short hair, like a helmet cut. Looked like she was crying. And the car had this black sticker on the back window. A dog logo, like a German Shepherd silhouette or something. I remember because my aunt trains dogs, and I thought it looked like her business logo." Noah's mind started to churn. You see the plates? Only part, Toby said, rubbing his nose, started with 7K, and the last part was 92, I think. Noah fished into his pocket, handed the boy 5 crumpled dollars. You didn't see anything, but if you remember more, you come tell me first. All right? Toby grinned and nodded, then ran off down the street, boots crunching on the ice. Noah didn't waste time. He called Ivy and told her everything. Within an hour, she pulled up in a dusty gray Subaru, stepping out with her usual braid and a focused look in her hazel eyes. She wore a new coat, navy, form-fitted, likely a thrift store score, and carried her laptop bag over one shoulder. In the RV, Ivy listened carefully while petting Clover, who had taken to following her around the space like a shadow. The little pup had a golden-brown hue, slightly darker than the others, with timid eyes and a habit of hiding behind furniture when the door opened. Ivy had gently coaxed her out the day before, and since then, Clover hadn't left her side. She reminds me of a rescue I worked with during my sophomore year, Ivy said, absent-mindedly scratching behind Clover's ears. That one wouldn't go near anyone but me for weeks. They remember, what's safe and what isn't. Noah sipped his lukewarm coffee. So, this SUV, think it's linked to your old internship place? Black Ridge, wasn't it? Ivy hesitated. I started digging after I saw those collars. Black Ridge Canine Training Facility officially closed last year after multiple violations. But here's the thing. Most of their digital records, gone. Website taken down, no staff directories, not even news articles beyond the first headline about the animal welfare lawsuit. She opened her laptop, showing Noah a cached news story. The article, dated just 11 months prior, included a blurry photo of the Black Ridge entrance gate and a headline, Canine Training Center under investigation after whistleblower report. But no follow-up? Noah asked, squinting. None, which means someone buried it. She flipped tabs on the screen and brought up a still image from Google Street View, taken months before the closure. A silver SUV was parked just inside the chain-link gate. The same black silhouette sticker of a shepherd's head was visible on the back window. That's the one, Noah muttered. That's got to be the one Toby saw. Ivy nodded. If she was a whistleblower or someone trying to get the puppies out, it makes sense she wouldn't go to a shelter, especially if she was being watched. Noah leaned back, rubbing his temple. So we're talking what? Someone from inside tried to smuggle the pups out and dump them when it got too hot? Maybe. Or maybe she was followed, or threatened. Clover nuzzled into Ivy's coat, and she absently wrapped the pup in her arms. They shouldn't have made it through the night, she whispered. They should have died out there. Noah looked around at the other pups, Muffin rolling lazily against the heater vent, Rusty gnawing on a towel edge, Peanut trying to climb over Bean, who remained as still as a statue. They didn't, he said. They got here, and now we figure out who tried to stop that. As Ivy prepared to leave, Clover whined and pawed at her leg. Ivy crouched, brushing snow from the pup's back before whispering, I'll come back, sweetheart. I promise. She closed the RV door behind her, snowflakes landing softly on her braid. Noah stood there for a while, silent, the sound of puppies breathing softly behind him. Then he glanced at the old paper map taped to his wall and circled the words, Black Ridge Facility, follow up. By the third night without Lucky, the RV felt colder than usual. Not physically. Noah had managed to keep the small propane tank running and the pups bundled in their flannel nests, but emotionally. There was a quiet absence in the rhythm of things, a space that had once been filled by the gentle wheezing of the smallest pup and his soft, stubborn attempts to nuzzle closer, even when too weak to lift his head. Noah found himself glancing at the empty crate more often than he wanted to admit. Just after dawn, his phone buzzed with Ivy's name. He picked it up with stiff fingers, pressing the speaker to his ear as he pulled on his boots. Good news, Ivy said without greeting. Lucky's still with us. He's eating on his own. A little shaky, but improving. I think he'll make it. Noah let out a long breath and chuckled. Stubborn little bastard. Yeah, and there's something else, Ivy added. We scanned him again this morning. There's a microchip, deep under the shoulder blade, not standard placement. Took a while to find. Noah leaned against the RV door. A chip? It's been tampered with. Half the data was wiped, but we recovered a name. Bridget K. First few numbers of an old registry code that doesn't match any official breeder. Bridget, Noah repeated, frowning. That ring any bells? Not yet, Ivy said, but I'm working on it. They agreed to meet later that afternoon, and Noah hung up, already distracted. Bridget. The name echoed as if it had been waiting, buried beneath snow and silence. Later that day, Ivy returned with a printout of the chip scan and a folder of case notes from the clinic. As she stepped inside the RV, Clover dashed up to greet her, tail wagging softly. Ivy knelt to scoop the pup into her arms, hugging her like a child. "Hey you," she murmured, "still my shadow?" Noah watched the two with quiet amusement as Ivy laid out her papers on the table. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was bright, an odd mix of exhaustion and relief. Her coat was dusted with road salt, her gloves stained from handling medical supplies. She was the type who rarely thought about herself when something or someone needed care. They studied the partial chip printout. It read, name, Bridget K. ID code 5BR2063, LX. Status, unverified. Data corrupt. Origin, Noah leaned in. So whoever she is, she had access to chip the dog, but not through a vet? Could have been someone with inside access, Ivy replied. Maybe she tried to remove or scramble it before abandoning him. Noah folded his arms. Or maybe she wasn't abandoning him. Maybe she was trying to save them, and just didn't make it far enough. They were interrupted by a soft knock on the RV door. Noah opened it to reveal a man and woman, both in their late 30s, standing just beyond the steps. The man had a kind face, with warm brown eyes, wire-rimmed glasses, and a carefully trimmed beard. His jacket was clean and tailored, and he wore a maroon beanie with a local credit union logo. The woman beside him stood slightly shorter, slender with tightly coiled brown hair and olive skin. She held a folder in one gloved hand and a dog toy in the other, as if unsure which was more appropriate. "Hi," the man said, smiling nervously. "Sorry to show up unannounced. I'm Jeremy, and this is my wife, Alicia. We saw the post Ivy put up about the rescued puppies. We'd love to meet them." Noah glanced at Ivy, who nodded slightly. "They reached out this morning. I forgot to mention with everything going on." Inside, Alicia instantly gravitated toward Muffin, who waddled to the edge of the playpen and looked up with a soft whine. His fur, always fluffier than the rest, made him look like a tiny loaf of bread, and his round belly pressed adorably against the edge of the blankets. "Oh, my heart," Alicia whispered, reaching down to lift him. Muffin snuggled into her arms immediately, resting his head under her chin, as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. "We've been trying to adopt for over a year," Jeremy said quietly, standing beside Noah. "Not a dog, I mean a child. We've been through all the paperwork, all the evaluations. But it's been hard. And then we saw your story." Alicia looked up, eyes glistening. "We can't ignore this. We have space. We have love. And I think he picked us first." Noah didn't answer right away. His eyes locked on Muffin, already content in her arms. Part of him wanted to say no, to keep all of them, to guard them from another abandonment. But the other part, the one that had lived through loss, through guilt, through nights alone in an RV talking to ghosts, knew what was right. That night, Noah didn't sleep much. He kept replaying Alicia's teary smile, Jeremy's quiet promise to send updates, and the image of Muffin looking back once before the door closed. "I hope he doesn't miss the others too much," Noah said aloud to no one. Scout curled up beside his foot in reply. The little watcher, always present, always still. The wind had shifted by the time the sun fell, brushing through Boise with an eerie stillness, as if the snow itself was holding its breath. Inside the RV, it was warm, almost cozy, with the faint crackle of Noah's portable radio whispering old jazz through fuzzy speakers. The remaining puppies lay in a heap of flannel and old sweaters, their small chests rising and falling in tandem, all except Scout. Scout, once labeled A4, sat alone near the door, ears pricked, eyes unblinking. Noah had noticed it earlier in the day. The way Scout refused to join the others during mealtime, the way he stood guard instead of sleeping. His golden coat, darker than the others, bristled slightly each time the floor creaked. His gaze never left the thin line of light beneath the doorframe. Noah moved quietly, refilling the water bowl with warm water, glancing at Scout now and then. "You smell something I don't?" he muttered. The pup didn't turn his head. Just after 9 p.m., a soft thud landed outside. Not loud, almost cautious. Then footsteps. Not booted, not hurried. Slow, deliberate. By the time Noah reached the door and flung it open, the night was silent again, save for the distant hum of a traffic light turning over. There, sitting on the snow-dusted welcome mat, was a large brown bag tied at the top with a red twist tie. Noah hesitated before picking it up, his breath hanging in the air. It was heavy, filled with unopened packs of premium brand dog food, the kind sold in specialty stores, the kind he could never afford. Taped to the side was a single folded slip of paper. In blocky, uneven handwriting, the note read, "Keep them quiet. No signature, no explanation." Noah's first instinct was to hurl the whole thing into the street, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped back into the RV and bolted the door shut. Scout hadn't moved. He simply stared harder. The next morning, Ivy arrived early. Her hair was tied into a messy bun this time, cheeks pink from the wind, and she carried a plastic storage tub filled with supplies. Puppy formula, ointment, fresh blankets. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, stepping inside. Noah held up the bag, then handed her the note. She read it slowly, frowning. "This is the expensive stuff," she murmured. "This brand isn't even available in most stores." "I didn't buy it," Noah said flatly. "Someone left it." Ivy squatted near Scout, who had immediately positioned himself between her and the door. "He knew," she said. "He was acting strange for a reason." "I think someone's watching us," Noah replied. "Maybe whoever dumped them. Maybe someone tied to that woman in the SUV." Ivy sat down on the floor, pulling her sleeves over her hands. It might not be a threat. Maybe it's someone trying to help, but who's scared to step forward? "Then why the note?" Noah asked. "Why not say who they are?" They both stared at the bag in silence. Later that day, Ivy took a phone call outside the RV. When she returned, her face held a different kind of tension, half worry, half hope. "That was Dr. Emmett, the senior vet I trained under during my second-year rotations," she said. "I told him about the chip, the markings on the collars, even the SUV. He remembered a woman, Willow Brenner, used to bring in dogs under someone else's name. Said she was always anxious, always looking over her shoulder. Then one day, she vanished." Noah glanced toward the puppies. "You thinking she's Bridget?" "No," Ivy said. "I think Willow was someone else, maybe connected. But not the same person. I'm still digging." As they talked, a small knock echoed on the door again. This time it wasn't a surprise. A woman stood outside, her posture careful and tentative, clutching a folder in both hands. She was in her late 40s, tall and reedy, with soft silver hair pulled into a low ponytail. Her clothes were modest, tan cardigan, worn jeans, and beige clogs, but clean. Her skin was pale with a natural pink hue to her cheeks, and her eyes, behind round glasses, held a calm warmth. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, voice quiet. "My name's Dr. Linda Hartley. I work at Fairview Animal Hospital. Ivy knows my daughter." Ivy stepped forward, smiling in recognition. "Yes, your daughter was in my bioethics class. Dr. Hartley, this is Noah." Linda nodded politely, then looked at the puppies. "I saw the news segment online. I'd like to adopt one, if you're still looking for homes." She knelt beside the pile of sleeping dogs, and immediately, Willow, a gentle pup with soft fur and slightly larger ears, woke, stretched, and climbed into her lap without hesitation. Linda smiled, moved, but composed. "She's quiet," Linda said. "Warm. I lost my service dog 2 years ago, not to age, to someone breaking into my home." She looked down. "I've waited a long time to feel safe again. I think I just did." Noah studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "If she picked you, I won't argue." They prepared Willow's bag together. Ivy offered to help with the paperwork and provided a health summary and feeding schedule. As Linda gently lifted Willow into a soft crate, she turned to Noah. "You saved them," she said, "but they'll save you back, one by one." That evening, Scout remained alert at the door. Noah sat nearby, not reading, not resting, just watching alongside him. The snow outside had crusted over with a thin layer of ice, and when the morning light struck it, the entire block shimmered like broken glass. Inside the RV, it was warm but unusually quiet. Willow's absence left a subtle void in the huddled puppy pile, and even Scout, usually vigilant near the door, seemed subdued. Rusty, on the other hand, had been particularly restless. He'd spent half the night dragging an old sock around, like it was his personal trophy, and yapping at his own reflection in the oven door. Ivy arrived earlier than usual, her parka dusted with frost, and her laptop bag slung over one shoulder. Her cheeks were flushed from the wind, and she carried a takeout tray with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I found something," she said before even removing her gloves, "and I think it changes everything." She opened her laptop on the fold-out table while Noah poured kibble into the bowls. The remaining pups stirred, noses twitching at the scent of breakfast. Rusty tripped over his own feet in excitement. "I was up until 3 last night," Ivy continued. "I started digging into newspaper archives from other cities. There was a story, 6 months ago, out of Spokane. A family reported the theft of a purebred golden retriever mother and 9 puppies. They claimed a break-in, no forced entry, just the dogs missing. Police chalked it up to a custody dispute between breeders, but the details match." She pulled up a digital article. It featured a blurry photo of a woman holding a full-grown golden retriever and what looked like a small mountain of golden-furred puppies crawling across her lap. "The woman in the photo is Natalie Prentice," Ivy said, "former vet tech, now running a small breed training facility on the outskirts of Spokane." Her statement mentioned a former employee named Bridget Keller, the last person to be seen with the mother dog before the entire litter disappeared. Noah leaned in, squinting at the image. One of the puppies had a slight notch on his left ear, barely visible beneath the fluff. "I'll be damned," Noah muttered. "That's Scout." Ivy nodded. "Exactly. That's a 4. She flipped to another tab, an online forum for rescue workers and animal rights advocates. Ivy had posted the photo of Scout and described his behavior, his markings, and the collar code. Within hours, someone claiming to be a cousin of Natalie had replied, identifying him by the notch, and said the family still hadn't recovered any of the stolen pups. "They thought they were gone for good," Ivy said softly. Noah stood and paced the narrow space, boots creaking on the RV floor. "So Bridget steals the dogs, and then what? Has second thoughts? Dumps them halfway across the state?" "She might have tried to hide them, or move them and got caught. Either way, she disappeared 2 weeks after that photo was taken. No bank activity, no employment record, just gone." "And the cops didn't follow up?" Noah asked, incredulous. "They wrote it off as a bad business breakup," Ivy replied. "No physical violence, no property damage, just missing dogs." Outside, a car pulled up. Not Ivy's. A blue sedan with foggy headlights and chipped paint. A woman stepped out, late 30s, petite, with curly red hair stuffed under a knit cap. She wore a faded green coat, jeans tucked into scuffed boots, and her eyes flicked around nervously as she approached the RV. "I'm sorry," she said, hands stuffed in her pockets. "Are you the ones with the rescue puppies?" Noah nodded cautiously. "Who's asking?" She pulled out a laminated staff ID. "Carrie Dawson, I'm a behavioral therapist. I work at Maple Ridge Youth Center. One of my patients, her name's Lila. She saw your story online. She hasn't spoken a full sentence in weeks, but when she saw a video of the puppies, she pointed to one and said, 'him.'" Ivy exchanged a look with Noah, then opened the door wider. "Come in." Carrie stepped inside, visibly surprised by the warmth. Her hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but something else, nerves or fatigue. Lila's 10. She has anxiety, panic disorder. Her parents dropped her off 3 months ago and haven't come back. I've been trying everything, art, music, small animals, but nothing stuck. As if on cue, Rusty bounded into the room, tripping over his own legs and nearly bowling over the water dish. He paused, blinking up at Carrie with one floppy ear still inside out. Carrie gasped. "That's him! That's the one!" Rusty patted over and, without hesitation, pressed his head against her leg. She knelt slowly, reaching out, and he licked her palm once, then barked softly. Ivy smiled. "He never does that on the first meeting." Noah crossed his arms. "You think this girl can take care of him?" "No," Carrie said, still stroking Rusty's ears. "But I can. He'll live at the center, in my office with her during sessions. We've got a pet program in place, certified support animals only. He'd be trained and supervised, and more than anything, he'd be loved." Noah didn't speak for a long time, but eventually he nodded. An hour later, Rusty was tucked into a small carrier in the back of the sedan, tail thumping even as the door closed. Carrie promised daily photo updates and Lila's drawings if she made any. Back in the RV, Noah sat at the table, looking over Ivy's shoulder as she scrolled through the Spokane case files. "She tried to do the right thing," he said finally. "Bridget. Whatever happened, she tried." Ivy nodded. "And maybe now, we help finish what she started." By the time twilight dipped below the Boise skyline, the cold had returned with sharpness. No longer the soft, muffling cold of falling snow, but a brittle, wind-bitten edge that scraped across metal and skin. Inside the RV, Noah was finishing up the evening routine. Bean was curled up near the heater, Clover asleep with her head tucked beneath Scout's chin. Peanut, the smallest and most delicate of the pups, trembled slightly even in sleep, his breath shallow, his legs twitching as if running from something invisible. Noah moved slower that evening. Maybe it was fatigue, maybe age, or maybe it was the creeping sense that things were shifting too fast. Answers coming in bursts, pups leaving one by one, and a name, Bridget, still heavy in the air like fog that refused to lift. Ivy had promised to return in the morning with a compiled file, everything she could find on Black Ridge and its connections to Bridget's last days. The wind howled once and knocked something loose against the side of the RV. Noah rose to check the latch on the outer vent. As he pulled his coat tighter and stepped toward the door, Scout growled, a low, warning sound, not his usual restless grumble. Clover immediately woke and pressed herself under the nearest bench, whining softly. Then came the unmistakable sound of the outer latch clicking. Noah froze. His breath caught in his throat. The door handle rattled. He moved quickly but quietly, grabbing the old steel bar he kept beside the propane tank. He flicked off the light and stood behind the door's edge, heart pounding in a way that hadn't happened since his trucker days, since a midnight rest stop in Arkansas turned into a knife-point robbery that left a scar across his left shoulder. The door cracked open. A man stepped in. He was lean, maybe 50, but wiry with an angular build. His face was long, pale, and creased with sun lines. His hair was gray at the temples, but greasy and unkempt, swept back from a sharp widow's peak. A thin scar ran across his jawline, ending just at the corner of his mouth. He wore a dark green canvas jacket, black gloves, and scuffed boots caked with slush. His eyes scanned the RV like he'd done it before. He reached forward silently, toward Clover. That was the last moment he had before Noah tackled him, slamming him backward into the cabinets. The pups yelped. Scout barked so hard his whole body lifted. Clover darted into a corner and disappeared behind the propane tank. Peanut cowered under the table. The man struggled, elbowed Noah once in the ribs, and tried to reach for something in his inner coat. But Noah struck again, once with the bar, not hard, but enough to drop the stranger to his knees. Then came the pounding at the RV door. "I'm Officer Mendez," came a voice. "Step away from him." Noah backed off, arms raised, as two officers burst in, weapons drawn. One immediately restrained the man, flipping him onto his stomach and cuffing him. "We got a call from your neighbor," Mendez said, panting. "Said she saw a figure sneaking around your lot. Thought it was just a homeless guy, until she heard a dog scream." The man said nothing. He stared ahead, breathing hard, lips pressed into a line. As they hauled him up, a phone dropped from his coat. Mendez picked it up, glanced at the screen, then her expression changed. "We need to take this in," she said, waving the phone at Noah. "There's more here than trespassing." An hour later, Noah sat with Ivy at the station. She had arrived breathless and pale, her hair a mess, sweatshirt thrown on under her winter coat, cheeks burning with worry. The pups were safe back in her car, wrapped in blankets and nestled into pet carriers she'd brought in case of emergencies. Officer Mendez laid the phone on the table between them. She tapped the screen, showing a series of messages in an encrypted app. One name kept appearing in the sender field. RH messages included, "You're late. Package needs recovery. Target has gone rogue. Cleanup may be necessary. No police, no names." And a final one. Image attachment. Woman tied in a dimly lit room, face obscured, timestamp 6 months prior. The name on the folder in the image, metadata, Bridget Keller. Ivy's hand trembled. "It's her. She's alive. Or she was." Officer Mendez nodded. We've already forwarded the phone to federal authorities. This isn't just about animal cruelty anymore. Outside the station, the snow was beginning to fall again, heavier this time. As Ivy and Noah exited, a tall man in a navy overcoat approached, holding his fedora to his chest. He had silver-white hair combed cleanly back, a strong jawline, and skin weathered like aged leather. His glasses were thick-rimmed, and he walked with a slight limp. He looked to be in his 70s. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I'm looking for a man named Noah Granger." "That's me," Noah replied, guarded. "I'm George Hawthorne. I saw the story on the Boise Rescue Forum. I came to see about a dog, a small one. They called him Peanut." Noah blinked. "You sure?" George smiled faintly. "I lost my wife last year. 42 years married. Our last dog passed a month later. My son begged me to get another, but I couldn't, not until I saw that little one, the one that shakes." From the back of Ivy's car, Peanut peeked over the crate rim, eyes wide but curious. George approached slowly, knelt, and opened the latch. Peanut stepped forward, cautiously, then placed one paw on George's knee. His body still trembled, but his gaze didn't flinch. George chuckled softly. "You're a brave little guy, aren't you?" Noah nodded. "He's yours, if you're sure." "I'm not sure of much anymore," George said, "but I know how it feels to be cold, and I know how it feels to be found." That night, only Bean, Clover, and Scout remained in the RV. Noah sat with Ivy on the steps, both holding warm drinks in silence. Snow blanketed the world again. "You think she's still out there?" Ivy asked softly. "Bridget?" Noah stared into the white. "I think, if she is, she's waiting, same as the rest of us." The video went live at 7:03 a.m. on a Sunday. It wasn't high quality, just Ivy holding her phone in the passenger seat of her Subaru, speaking plainly with Scout curled up in her lap. She didn't try to edit the lighting or filter her voice. Her words were direct, her eyes steady, but shadowed from the sleepless nights. She shared everything. The abandoned puppies, the collars marked A1A8, the tampered chip, the break-in, the intercepted messages, and the photo of Bridget. She didn't name Noah directly, only calling him a man who didn't have much, but gave everything. She finished with a photo montage of the puppies, each in their new homes, one by one, Muffin licking peanut butter off a toddler's cheek, Rusty curled beside a smiling girl in a therapy session, Willow asleep in Dr. Hartley's lap during a snowstorm, Lucky wrestling with an older golden retriever, Peanut lying by a fireplace with an old man's slippers in his mouth. By noon, the video had 300,000 views. By nightfall, it had crossed 1 million. Within 24 hours, it was on local news, then national. Talk shows requested interviews, hashtags trended, people asked, where was Bridget? Who was RH? How many more litters had disappeared? Noah tried to ignore it all. He kept the TV off and the radio tuned to old country stations. He cooked rice and ground turkey for the remaining pups, Bean, Clover, and Scout, who had become the calm center of a world suddenly spinning too fast. Ivy stopped by when she could, bringing updates in pieces. The FBI had taken over the case, the man who broke in was refusing to speak, and the name, RH, had been traced to a powerful figure in the training world. His full name was Richard Holstman, a retired colonel turned private security magnate, white-haired, 6'4", with a booming voice and a hand in dozens of canine programs across the country. He had donated millions to behavioral advancement centers and sponsored seminars about utilitarian breeding systems. Holstman had never been arrested before, never even investigated. Until now. Noah stood on his RV steps the morning the indictment went public. Ivy arrived holding her phone with the news open, her eyes wide. "He's being charged," she said. "Animal trafficking, obstruction, racketeering." Noah nodded once. "About time." Behind them, Clover nudged her head out from a crate, tail wagging gently. Bean stretched and yawned, then rolled back into a warm lump beside the heater. Scout, ever watchful, sat at the window, staring out into the morning light like he knew something was ending, and something else was about to begin. Later that afternoon, a car pulled up. A woman stepped out, tall with dark brown skin, a tailored wool coat, and a voice that suggested years of commanding rooms. She introduced herself as Elaine Marchand, director of the National Animal Recovery Initiative. She spoke with crisp diction and a calm that felt both practiced and genuine. "Miss Ivy Malone," she said, extending a hand, "you've shaken the foundation of our field. We'd like to offer you the role of Regional Program Supervisor. You'd oversee response units and protocol reform nationwide." Ivy blinked. "I haven't even finished my degree." Elaine smiled. "And yet, no graduate in the last decade has done what you just did." Ivy looked to Noah. "She earned it," he said simply. Ivy turned back. "I accept, but I'm not leaving Boise, not yet." That evening, Ivy helped Noah begin packing. Not just boxes of supplies or old photographs or worn blankets, but everything else. The weight of the RV, the worn path he walked between propane tanks and cold mornings, the ghosts of what he thought his life would be. Elaine had also arranged something else, a modest one-bedroom cottage on the edge of town. Not fancy, but warm, with real plumbing, a fenced yard, and 2 wide windows that face sunrise. It was the first time in years Noah unlocked a front door that led to a real home. Scout was the last one to leave the RV. Noah held the door open, but the pup hesitated, glancing once at the empty space behind them, then stepping into the snow and following quietly. Inside, Noah set the last crate down and sat heavily on the living room floor. Scout curled into his lap, resting his chin on Noah's knee. "You know," Noah said, voice low, "I had a son once, Caleb. Smart kid, sick most of the time, but he smiled more than anyone I knew. He wanted a dog so bad. I kept saying a next year. Then the years ran out." Scout's tail thumped once. "You're not a replacement," Noah continued, "but you're something else. Something I didn't think I'd get again." Scout shifted closer, pressing against his chest. Later, as snow began to fall again, Ivy brought hot soup and old photos she'd printed of each dog's new life. They pinned them on a corkboard in the kitchen. One space remained empty. "This one's for Scout," Ivy said, "whenever he's ready to pose." "He's not a poser," Noah smirked. "He's already a legend," she replied. That night, Scout fell asleep beside the bed. Noah lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, feeling something thaw in his chest that had been frozen for years. Outside, the snow came soft and slow, like forgiveness. In the end, it wasn't just about the puppies. It was about broken people finding something worth holding on to again. About a lonely man who thought he had nothing left, until a trembling pup laid his head on his lap and reminded him that even the most damaged hearts still beat for love. About a young woman who refused to look away and a nation that remembered how to care. Some say what happened was a coincidence, but maybe, just maybe, it was a miracle. A quiet one. The kind God leaves at your doorstep in the snow, wrapped in fur, shivering but alive. So, if you believe that grace can still find us in the most unexpected places, if you believe that second chances are more than stories, then share this one. Leave a comment below and tell us, what's the kindest thing someone ever did for you when you were at your lowest? Let your story inspire someone else. Hit that subscribe button if you believe no soul should ever be left behind. And tonight, as you rest, we ask one more thing. Pray. Not just for Noah, not just for Scout, but for every life still waiting in the cold to be found. May God bless you, and may you become someone's miracle.